No, 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 no. Mary Kay Cabot, we gonna not let you do it. You can't do this, Mary Kay. It's too late in the game for you to now try to pull this bull job. We not gonna let you do it. We see right through you. And you know, when you made these remarks, people was gonna jump down your throat. You know better, Mary Kay. It's not gonna work over here because we got all the receipts that you put out there previously. So this little antic that you're trying, Mary Kay, it's not gonna work. But we're gonna talk about Mary Kay today, y'all, because Mary Kay said the unthinkable. But we're not gonna let her do it though. We're not gonna let her do it.
A reporter goes on a major Cleveland sports radio show. She talks about the Browns quarterback competition. She praises Deshaun Watson. She calls him the leader in the clubhouse. And then she says something about Shedeur Sanders that nobody expected. And the internet lost its mind. Not because she said something terrible, but because of who she is. Because of the history. Because fans remembered every single thing she said before this moment. And that's what made it hit different.
Do it. No, Mary Kay, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't have it both ways. And we're going to talk about it right after this.
Let me put you on game. These other podcasts out here talking that shit, but ain't repping the same. This my bro K-Step, chopping up topics for your outfits. From politics to your cockpits. Tune in, you gotta watch this. Exclusive material for your radio, stereo, bumping high definition. Stop what you doing and listen. We smashing all competition. You better jump on this wave. Somebody pass me a mic, man, I got something to say.
Well, guys, you know I got something to say, man. Mary Kay Cabot tried to pull a fast one. But nah, we see right through it. See, what they try to do is they try to build you up and then they'll break you down like a Black & Decker workbench. But we're not going to let her do this because she said the unthinkable. She said something that sparked a lot of people's reaction. And we got to talk about it, man. Did y'all hear what Mary Kay Cabot had to say on the Ken Carman and Anthony Lima show? She tried to slide that on in there after what she did, how she just said all these great things about Deshaun Watson and how he's the leader in the ball club and all kinds of things.
This is the Shedeur Sanders story. And today, we're not just talking about a quarterback competition. We're talking about a young man who's been doubted, dismissed, and underestimated at every single level, and keeps showing up anyway. Let's go back, because to understand what's happening right now in Cleveland, you have to understand where Shedeur Sanders came from, and what he's been carrying on his back since the day he stepped into the national spotlight. Shedeur Sanders is Deion Sanders' son. That's the first thing people say. That's always the first thing people say. Like it's a warning label. Like being born into greatness is somehow a disadvantage. Like the name on your birth certificate determines whether you deserve to be on a football field. But here's the thing about Shedeur. He never hid from that name. He never tried to escape it. He carried it. He wore it. And then he went out and built something of his own on top of it. At Colorado, he put up numbers that made people stop scrolling. In one of the most brutal environments a quarterback can play in, with an offensive line that gave him barely any time, he stood in the pocket and delivered. He took hits, he got back up, he made throws that quarterbacks with far more protection couldn't make. And when the lights were brightest, when the cameras were everywhere, when the whole country was watching Colorado for the first time in years, Shedeur Sanders didn't flinch. That's not a storyline. That's tape. That's real. So when the NFL draft came around, the question wasn't whether Shedeur could play.
But then she tried to follow it up by saying some things about Shedeur Sanders, and we're not going to let you do it. Because in the past, we've heard everything that you have said about Shedeur Sanders when it's dealing with a quarterback competition. It even goes back to last year in 2025 when you was Kevin Stefanski's sidekick, when you was vouching for Kevin Stefanski on why Shedeur is not this and why Shedeur can't do this. And then all of a sudden, Kevin Stefanski's out the building. They got a new regime and Todd Monken as the head coach. And Todd Monken has been standing 10 toes down, and he's really not giving you the access that you want. So now the stories that you write is something that you have to come from your opinion. But then you still putting this narrative out there that Deshaun Watson is the leader in the ball club when the questions are asked to you about Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson. So now we got you caught red-handed on the hot mic saying these things about Shedeur Sanders, but we're not going to let it fly because, Mary Kay, a lot of people don't trust you. The fans of Cleveland don't trust you, man. The fans are sick of some of the things that you've been saying and the narratives that you've been creating, formulated from your own opinion. But this time, we not going to let you do it. So I'm going to let y'all listen to what she said about Deshaun Watson and watch what she slides in about Shedeur Sanders.
The question was where he'd land. And Cleveland, a franchise that has been searching for a quarterback for what feels like a generation, decided to bring him in. Not as a starter, not as the answer, but as a competitor. And that's where things started getting complicated. Because the Cleveland Browns also brought back Deshaun Watson, a former Pro Bowl quarterback, a former number 4 overall pick, a guy who, at his best, was genuinely one of the most exciting quarterbacks in the NFL, but also a guy who hasn't played real football in 2 years. 2 full years. Injuries, suspension, setbacks, the kind of layoff that changes a player, changes their timing, changes their confidence. Now, you've got a competition. And now, you've got the media picking sides. Mary Kay Cabot has been covering the Cleveland Browns for a long time. She knows this team. She has sources. She has access. And she's been vocal, very vocal, about this quarterback situation. Last year, when the previous coaching staff was in place, she was out there talking about why Shedeur couldn't do this and couldn't do that. She was on the wrong side of that argument more than once. Fans noticed. They kept receipts. So when she went on the Ken Carman and Anthony Lima show and started talking about how Deshaun Watson is the leader in the clubhouse based on what she's seeing in practice, people were listening closely, very closely. She talked about Watson's athleticism, his quick decisions, his experience, his mastery of the game. And yeah, in a practice setting, in drills, in controlled environments, a veteran quarterback is gonna look polished. That makes sense. Nobody is arguing that. But then she said something about Shedeur that fans were not ready for.
No. Let's take a listen.
Mary Kay Cabot joining us here on the show. So is he, I know they won't confirm who's the leader in the clubhouse to be the starter. Do you believe that he is the leader to be the starter, or are we up in the air still?
I do believe that he is the leader in the clubhouse right now. That's what it looks like when we look out there at practice, and that's what it looks like based on the performance of the two quarterbacks, Deshaun and Shedeur. But here's the thing to remember about Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur is a gamer. Shedeur plays on natural instincts.
Nope.
When the lights are on and it's time for him to march downfield in a 2-minute situation, he gets in a zone and he lets his natural instincts take over. And that's why you saw him be able to perform pretty well in some clutch situations last year, despite the fact that he had never thrown to most of these players, and the fact that he didn't have much protection and that the line was held together with smoke and mirrors. So he's not necessarily going to excel or shine in these type of practice settings, because this isn't when you get into that zone, when you get into that rhythm. So my guess is that they will set a QB depth chart, maybe coming out of minicamp, maybe even going into minicamp, not sure about that. But just because you set your QB depth chart doesn't mean that is going to be your opening day starter. So I think this is going to happen in phases. I think a QB depth chart will be set just so you can have your ones working together in camp. But then you still have an opportunity to go out there in joint practices against the Bills, in preseason games, and state your case. So I just don't even think it's going to be over when the QB depth chart is set.
Well, I think that's very interesting because I've said all along that I thought it was going to be really hard for Shedeur with a new coaching staff and this type of time frame that we know
Anthony
that
Lima
wasn't set in
is a
stone,
hater.
but was something offered up by the new head coach about wanting to have, you know, his depth chart decided hopefully by June. And you just said Shedeur is a gamer, but if he doesn't get the opportunities in the games, then we're just relying on practice and mastery of a playbook. And that was always going to be to Deshaun Watson's edge.
Well, Deshaun does show out well in these types of situations because of his athleticism, and his athleticism is really on display in these practices, and also just his experience, his mastery of just NFL football. I mean, you're talking about a former first round pick versus, you know, who has started numerous games versus a young quarterback who is still in the developmental phase. So naturally, Deshaun is going to look better in this setting. He moves better. He makes very, very quick decisions, and he just looks the part.
She called him a gamer. She said Shedeur plays on natural instincts, that when the lights come on, when it's a 2-minute drill, when everything is on the line, he gets into a zone. She acknowledged that he performed in clutch situations last year even without protection, even without chemistry with his receivers, even with an offensive line that was, in her own words, held together with smoke and mirrors. She said all of that, and then she turned right back around and said Watson still looks like the leader. And that's when people lost it. Because you can't say a guy is a gamer, you can't acknowledge that he performed under impossible conditions, and then dismiss him by pointing to practice reps. You can't do that, especially when the guy you're praising hasn't been in a live game situation in 2 years. Practice and games are not the same thing. Every player who ever played the sport knows this. Coaches know this. Fans know this. There's a reason they say practice players and game players are two different breeds. Some guys look incredible in shorts and helmets with no pass rush and no crowd noise. And some guys are built for the moments that matter, for the noise, for the pressure, for the chaos. Everything Shedeur Sanders showed last year suggests he's the second type. Think about what he dealt with at Colorado, and then coming into the NFL. Think about the scrutiny, the criticism, the noise around his family, around his confidence, around whether he's too much or too cocky, or whatever word people want to use when a young black quarterback walks into a room knowing exactly who he is. He never broke. He never complained publicly. He kept working. And now, in Cleveland, with a new head coach in Todd Monken, with a fresh start, with a real opportunity in front of him, he's competing. He's showing up every day. He's learning a new system. He's building relationships with receivers he barely knows yet. And people who are watching practice are saying he's right there. Not ahead, maybe, but right there. And that matters. Because the narrative was supposed to be that this would be over quickly. That Watson would walk back in, turn on the switch, and the conversation would be finished before training camp ended. But that's not what's happening. The conversation is still alive. The competition is still real. And that's why Mary Kay's comments hit so differently. Because when someone who has doubted Shedeur, who has consistently leaned toward the veteran quarterback narrative, suddenly starts calling Shedeur a gamer and acknowledging his clutch ability, even while trying to give Watson the edge, fans see that as a crack. They see that as someone who knows more than they're saying. Someone who has watched practice and maybe, just maybe, has seen something they didn't expect. If you're a Shedeur fan watching all of this, you already know what it feels like. Some players need structure and repetition to perform. Some players need the blood pumping and the game on the line to unlock what's inside them. Shedeur is clearly the second kind. And if Cleveland is smart, if the coaching staff is patient, if they let this competition play out in real games against real defenses, they might just discover something. they might discover that the guy everyone keeps trying to push aside is exactly the guy they've been looking for. If you've been following Shedeur's journey and you want to stay up with how this plays out, hit that subscribe button right now, because this story is not over, not even close, and we're going to be here for every chapter of it. Because this is where we are. Watson is the leader in the clubhouse, according to practice observers, but Shedeur is a gamer, according to the same people who have been doubting him, and training camp hasn't even started. Joint practices against the Bills are coming. Preseason games are coming. Real snaps, real pressure, real moments. And if history tells us anything about Shedeur Sanders, it's this. Give him the moment and get out of the way. Because when the lights come on and the crowd gets loud and everything is on the line, something changes in that young man. Something clicks. And the people who counted him out are left trying to explain what just happened. Mary Kay called him a gamer. She didn't mean it as a compliment for why he should start. But fans heard something else entirely. They heard the truth slipping out. They heard someone who has watched this kid play enough to know that you can't fully dismiss him, no matter how hard you try. Shedeur Sanders is not done proving people wrong. He's just getting started. And Cleveland? Cleveland might be exactly the place where the whole world finally has to admit it.